Oh, awesome.
The Eagle has landed. So, Alan, how long have you been here?
7 years.
And you're vice chair.
I'm vice chair.
My name is Greg Stone, homeowner, regular board member. Taylor Rich, resident of Noble Heights, homeowner, just a regular guy.
Nancy Lawler, and I've been with Normal Heights for 30 years.
Right.
And I'm manager of the park.
Hi, Emily Colwell, renter, lived here. I was trying to do math, I think about 8-9 years, something like that.
Greg, blanking on his last name. No, I'm sorry, no. Our secretary, Brian Schrader was not able to attend, so I'll need someone to take notes, mainly attendance and the vote counts. The rest will be in the recording.
I can do it.
Okay, as a reminder, we don't monitor the chat in the Zoom, nor is it included in the notes. Next up, I'll see if I can get this agenda on the screen. Is there any agenda modifications? Mainly from board? Okay. Then we have, next is the meetings minutes from the last meeting that were sent via email. Just need to approve those meeting minutes. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes. Second from Alan. And all in favor? Show of hands. Unanimous. Okay, moving on. Next up is treasurer's report from Francis.
Right, no change, no money has changed hands, there's still $2,085.99.
I am thinking of assembling a consent agenda where we would have items like the treasurer's report, if they haven't changed, meeting minutes, and they would be pre-approved. So we can kind of speed along. If that's amenable to everyone, then I can start assembling a consent agenda for the next meeting. Okay. And yes, you were saying.
I was gonna ask, when the heck am I gonna get paid for the L portion?
I'll bring that up too. Aren't there 2 other groups that are gonna help pitch in for that?
So far, we just have one, the Adams Business Association paid me for 1/3. And you guys are on the hook for 2/3 unless you can get Kensington Tillman to sign up. And I spoke to the recreation group who are looking for an opportunity. They might buy in too. So I can hold up, but I want it to remain in the minutes that you guys owe me big bucks.
Big bucks. So did you approach them about buying into it? So
Yeah, that'd be my responsibility.
okay, great. Well, I guess.
If worse comes to worse, you guys will pay me, to be off the hook, and later on, somebody might pay us to buy in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can buy your paper and then.
Right. NSF.
Okay, next up is a non-agenda public comment. At this time, we'd like to take any comments, non-agenda items from anyone attending. Or online. We have how many do we have on the Zoom call right now? It's like 14? No. 18, okay. If anyone on the Zoom call would like to speak at this time, raise your hand or unmute. Wave frantically, raise a flag.
I'll have a question.
Yes.
So attending via Zoom, does that count as attending one of these meetings towards becoming a member of the board? Or do you have to physically be here in person?
It's a good question.
Board members have to attend.
That's what board members, not board members.
I'm assuming that to qualify, but the bylaws don't say anything about it.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
We're going to need to change the bylaws to take away that requirement. because that was part of the recent changes to the community planning group ordinances.
Yeah, I only attended twice via, I think virtually, that's why I didn't remember before, because it was during the pandemic.
Same for me. Yeah. So, I would make a motion to continue the policy of allowing, people to, become board members if they've attended, 2 meetings in the past 12 months, either in person or, via virtual Zoom.
So if they're attending virtually, they should probably put the name into the chat,
Yes,
so we can record that.
and it looks like, Sally has her hand up. Go ahead, Sally.
I
See
was
if we can
just
hear you.
gonna say, I'm from the Choice Valley Community Planning Group, and I just wanted to listen to see how well I worked. We're gonna be doing it at our local library, and we're still trying to figure that out. But last meeting we did just live. Thanks.
Thank you. We could hear you loud and clear in here. That's nice.
For $2,000, I'll set up a planning group for that. I'll make it.
Yeah. You get consulting. You got this going.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, then we'll move on to,
I got one.
yes,
Did our district representative respond to the invitation?
no, and in fact, I don't see Ben Mendoza here either right now. I'm hoping so.
Sorry, the mayor's office is on that, and then should be in their consultation as well. They should be getting their answer.
Okay, 'cause I know that, Sean Elo-Rivera had a meeting nearby, but,
Correct.
sort of overlapping with our meeting. That's good to hear. Okay. Great, then we won't close up early and leave the place locked up. Okay, next up is digital communications, monitoring from next door, Facebook, email, any news. And I'll take, we don't have a specific person that's tasked with this, so I'll just ask openly to the board if there's been any interesting things happening in the social media.
I'm sorry.
And no, just, I think, no, okay. I think in general, there has been quite a bit of news about this rally coming up. And I think Mike is on the line. Mike, did you want to share some news at this time?
Certainly. We are definitely having a rally this coming up Saturday, the 6th from noon until 2. And we're hoping everybody can attend. We're going to be discussing the proposed SB 10 and how it would affect our neighborhood. And of course, we're also going to be voicing our opinions about the sustainable development area and how it affects the Mars project on 35th and Adams. I'm sure hoping that all of you will attend. We have signs for you. In fact, an opportunity to make more signs. And we'd love to see you all there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, when the mayor's representative and our city council arrives, we'll give you an opportunity to fill your screen with your signs.
Excellent.
Next up as reviewing AB 68 and shall the board send a letter advising updates to the draft bill. This is actually something I was reading that AB 68 has is currently being authored by Chris Ward in Sacramento, and it would modify the ADU builds that we're seeing under the other AB 68 from previous years. I think it was 2019. So this is a new AB 68. The concerning portion is that in addition to defining the area for builds is 1/2 mile from walking distance from transit. Kudos for putting walking into that statement. But it also includes 1 mile from any cluster of 6 businesses. So if you have a cafe, a grocery store, and a Walmart, anything, any cluster of 6 will qualify a mile radius for making, for extending sort of the SB 10. So I would make a motion to, that this group send a letter to Chris Ward and CC city council and the mayor on this particular portion of the bill. And I can supply the full text of the bill and the portion that we would like to have modified.
Can I ask how it defines business?
Yeah, let me, pull that up. Oh, yeah. Oh, perfect. Okay, so this is section C. The parcel is located within 1 mile from a cluster of 6 or more of the following: restaurant, bar, coffee shop, supermarket, grocery store, hardware store, park, pharmacy, or drugstore.
Say park.
Park. So
Can you
there's,
explain exactly what you're talking about? What would this feature of the bill do? Allow construction 1 mile from?
it would allow,
construction?
yeah, it would allow denser construction in residential neighborhoods for additional ADUs. In San Diego, we're kind of already feeling that with the extension of the SDA. So this is sort of Sacramento taking the concept of the SDA and trying to put it into another bill, AB 68, that would take what we're experiencing with the SDA and make it statewide.
And what is SDA?
It's a sustainable development area, and it used to be that it was listed as a transportation priority area, which was a 1/2 mile radius of high quality transportation, 2 bus lines to the frequency of greater than 15 minutes, or a trolley stop. The SDA corrected that TPA from a straight crow flies radius of 1/2 mile to be walking distance, because we have canyons and other obstructions in the way. But as a compromise, they extended it to a full mile. So in effect, they kind of did a switcheroo and they extended the buildable area by about 5,000 acres. So this would sort of take the SDA, which is currently has a lawsuit against it, and would codify it in state law. So then the SDA wouldn't even matter, because it would become state law.
If I could interrupt, I think the request for this group to agree to send a letter is not on the agenda. Or is it?
That's item 7.
I'm sorry, I didn't know we were down there yet.
That's okay.
Paul, I have a question about this.
Yes,
We're sending a letter for Normal Heights Planning Group,
yes.
and this bill proposal change affects larger than the Normal Heights Planning Group area,
It would affect our community and all of California.
all of California.
Yes.
And I'm trying to look it up, but I can't find it. Can you tell me what the density increase is? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Okay, because yeah, I mean, it's
If-
kind of
I can field all these questions and we can come
Yeah.
back to it at our next meeting.
no, sure, sorry, I'm trying to scroll and
Yeah,
figure it out
It
too.
is a very difficult bill to find if you Google search it, because the AB 68 that was authorizing additional ADUs for the state passed in 2019 has the same bill number.
Right, yeah.
So there's 2 AB 68s out there now, so it makes it very hard to do a search on it.
Can we request it from Chris Ward's office?
The text of the bill is available online, and I can supply a link to that.
No, I personally would like to look at this,
Okay.
look into this much further,
Okay,
so that we can respond, you know, in whatever way you decide.
then shall we like look into this more?
I recommend we table it
Yeah.
for the next meeting, so
Okay.
that we all have a chance to look at it.
Okay,
And I would love to have it.
And then,
yes.
there's somebody, with their hand up.
Oh, so sure. Ella Marshall. Please go ahead.
Oh, this is Lydia Marshall with the city. I was just letting you guys know I'm here for the Ward Canyon update when you're ready.
Excellent, thank you.
I have a question. So if you're tabling this letter, which all is very important to our future, At what point is this going through in Sacramento while we're sitting around waiting to write a letter?
Legislative session typically ends in June.
The bill has not been scheduled for committee yet. So it's not even been scheduled for a hearing in committee yet, and it has to go through multiple committees. It's not something that's gonna be passed in the next month.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's my question, because there's no point in sending a letter.
Yes. Yeah, we're really trying to get out in front of new bills and new legislation before it's birthed on us. But thank you. Good point. Okay, so that's tabled and we'll exchange information offline.
Will you send that to everyone? I think you might have sent a link already, but we.
I did, but I'll reformat it so that it's easy to follow the links and the exact passage and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not an easy read.
I think I tried. It was before, I guess.
Yeah.
There you go. That is-
I printed it out and took a highlighter to it because it was too much to read on screen. Yeah.
I'll make a quick comment. if that's okay.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot easier to actually review it if it gets scheduled for hearing in committee, because at that point, it'll get a staff analysis that will kind of explain what their thinking is and what it is they're trying to do and what this bill is trying to accomplish.
Okay.
But that won't happen until it's actually scheduled for hearing.
Good to know. I'll pick your brain on like what our next moves should be in terms of timing.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, I mean, when something's coming out of committee, it'll get torn to shreds. It'll, there's some value to reading it now, but until it comes out of committee, everything's up for negotiation. Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay. Next up is the reports and updates from city, county, and state. And Lydia Marshall is on the line, and she has a presentation related to the Ward Canyon developments. Lydia,
Hi, everyone. Yeah, can you guys hear me clearly?
we can hear you very well. If you have anything to share, I think Ellen might need to extend sharing. Okay.
Yes, I'd like to share my screen. Just to share with you guys the general development plan that I'll be referring to. I'll try to share now. Okay, it says it's been disabled, so.
Guys figured it out.
I don't see an option for that.
Can I help?
Yeah, you see an option for allowing sharing, or maybe she already has.
Yep. Right here. Your screen. Right, that's our sharing screen. What we want to do is have her as participant allowed to share screen. What is her name?
Ellen Marshall.
Yeah.
Ellen Marshall.
Do you see her?
I'll let her scroll down. She's on the left.
Turn back on.
Oh, she's probably.
We're looking for you. Hang on. All right, there. So we're gonna make her co-host.
I don't see COVID.
Oops. There you go. You have to make her host. And
So, Lydia, do you have is your green share button active?
When I click it, it says the host has disabled participant screen sharing, but it didn't allow me to record. I saw a message pop up allowing me to record.
Yeah, I only have pin because I'm not hosting. Yeah,
I'm gonna make her host. What the heck?
yeah. Okay, you're gonna be host next.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Well, hopefully you guys have seen that as it's popped up.
We do see the park.
So my name is Lydia Marshall. I'm an associate civil engineer in the Engineering and Capital Projects Department with the City of San Diego. And I'm just here to give a brief update on Ward Canyon Neighborhood Park Project. I see one or two familiar faces from the community rec group meeting that we had last month. So I'm here to kind of just repeat some of those updates, and a few items, additional things have happened since then. So what you guys are seeing on the screen now, this was the general development plan amendment that was approved by the Parks and Recreation Board in 2013. So this is the approved amendment plan. Many people at the meeting that I attended last month was familiar with this and what the extent of the improvements are. So these are the proposed improvements for the park, and the only thing that will kind of change the improvements or the orientations are the studies that we're doing now: surveying, geotechnical exploration, and so on. But this is the intent of the new park improvements. So the general amendment plan included expansion of the park from currently about 5 acres to about 6 acres. We're acquiring approximately 1 acre from Caltrans as part of a extensive relinquishment process that we're underway with right now. The improvements will include demolition of the existing basketball courts, and it will be rebuilt. You know, if the studies support it, it is proposed to be rebuilt in the area of the temporary dog park that's in use right now. There will be a new community building where the basketball court is currently located. Of course, a new expanded dog park, pergola shade structures, exercise fitness stations, increased security lighting, a new pedestrian bridge, new site furnishing, so benches, picnic tables, etc., new irrigation and planting, new accessible sidewalks, a new community garden in the area of the old dog park. We spoke about this a little bit at last month's meeting. There will be a parking lot on 40th Street where the street is currently blocked off. And of course, I mentioned the relinquishment of about 1 acre from Caltrans. There will also be a realignment of the I-15 ramp. This is being required by Caltrans in order for them to relinquish this acre of land to the city. They're requiring us to realign their I-15 ramp, off ramp. So can't provide too many details on that. We're still in the very early stages of design. But that is ongoing. We will also be demolishing the police storefront structure that's at the intersection of Adams Avenue and 39th Street. You guys will be seeing that. That will probably be the first thing you guys see. We are currently working with our consultant to get that work underway. They'll be doing the site evaluations of that existing building and creating demolition plans to submit to Development Services Department for approval. So I would say we'll probably start see work on that in the next year or so, year to 2 years, that building would be demolished. But that's the first phase that we're actively working on, and it's being worked on in tandem or at the same time with the Caltrans relinquishment process. So approaching it from several different sides to get the park completed in a timely way. And so those are pretty much the improvements for the park. So like I said, many of you guys are familiar. Some of the things that came up at last month's meeting, just to bring those back to the forefront. The community garden was a discussion. There were some members who recall that this was supposed to be a community garden where residents of the community were assigned little lots, and they were to maintain those. And it was supposed to be kind of fruit and vegetable garden. There's been lots of discussion since 2013 about how these community gardens have worked and where there's been some successes and some not so successes. And, you know, we have a different dynamic with some of our transient population these days. So Park and Rec is actively talking about how to approach these community gardens. And so we're still talking offline about how it will be implemented at this park. Other items that came up was increased security lighting and security presence. So there is increased security lighting is a major component of this project. There have been no formalized discussions about increased security presence, but again, Park and Rec is exploring these things offline to see what could potentially be incorporated in the project. There was an additional discussion about the placement of the new recreation building, and that allowing for some hiding places and, maybe some areas of limited safety. And so we're also evaluating that with our design consultant about how the building should be oriented for proper, so you can see there's lots of visibility. But the community will have an opportunity to give some comment on the rec center building. We plan to come to the community, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years after the relinquishment is underway, more substantially, to get feedback on how the community plans to use this rec center building. And, Park and Rec would like to include some offices and what the functionality will be. So there'll be some input process for that. And then we'll probably bring some image boards to show what you see here, but to kind of show some mock-ups, some cut sheets of potential layouts and products and so on. So that will probably be about 2 years out, but that's kind of where we are with the project currently. So we're hitting it on multiple fronts and making some early progress. But yeah, exciting news about the storefront. I know a lot of people are ready to see that building demolished, as it has become a safety concern for the community. So free to field any questions about what I've presented. So I'll go ahead and mute my mic so you can ask questions and I'll answer as best I can.
Libby, you mentioned a new pedestrian bridge is going to replace the existing bridge that goes to Kensington, or is this a different bridge altogether from?
This is a different bridge altogether. So if you look on the sheet that we have here, the pedestrian bridge is going to be placed south of the basketball courts to kind of connect. I think that's Madison Avenue. That's at the south end of the park. So connects apartment structures that are apartment buildings that are on the south end of the park.
There's a staircase there now.
Danielle? Yes. Danielle?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Very well.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is really good to see. Thank you for bringing it. I do have a question for our chair.
Yes.
Is this on the agenda anywhere, sir?
That's number 9.
Number 9, thank you. And then a question for the presenter. Is all of the funding available to have this built out, or is there just enough funding for design?
So we, Park and Rec is, it's going to be a very large scale project. And with inflation and so on, we're constantly chasing costs. So all of the funding is not identified because we don't have a current cost estimate, because we're still figuring out what we know what the full scope of it is going to be, but we try to get the costs as close to construction. So we have accurate costs for materials and labor, et cetera. So there is an approximated cost, but by the time we get to the point where we come to you guys 2 years from now, probably be escalated quite a bit. So there is some partial funding for us to go through the design process currently and for us to go through the relinquishment process with Caltrans. And that's the extent of the funding at this time, and to demolish the police storefront structure. And so Park and Rec is going to continue to add funding to the project as is needed for us to progress.
Will you be going for grants, or is it going to be all Prop C money or DIF money? Do you happen to know?
Grants. So the first allotment of funding, it should be state grants. And it'll probably be a combination of funding sources, truthfully.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Jim, and then Mike.
I have a quick question. It's been classified as a neighborhood park. Will the addition of the new Park and Rec building facility change its character to a community park?
It's still listed as a neighborhood park. I can raise that question for clarification with Park and Rec, but currently still listed as a neighborhood park.
Thanks.
What's the difference?
Requirement for parking and some understanding.
Okay. Is Mike? Yes.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm super excited to see this. This looks very similar to the many of the people who are in this group now. We're involved with the parks design way back in the day. I was, and the mock building, which is the building you're discussing that's coming down, was slated to be removed, and it looks very much like it was intended. And then they were going to make the police satellite storefront or the police station down on Landis. And so we held off. We made that a location for the police to kind of chill. And then it just became an unsafe building. And it's just been empty for so long. And it's been such an eyesore for our community. And it should be open and welcoming, just like it looks like it would be from the sketches I see. So kudos to the folks at Park and Rec and the mayor's office if that's how this came together. But it's been a long time coming. I'm pretty excited.
Thank you. I actually have a question. I'm seeing on the, I still see the sweeping asphalt that comes down the east side. I'm assuming that there'll be parking in that part as there is today?
That's the other.
Are you showing this here, this area here?
No, they further up, or is that the on-ramp I'm looking at?
This is the on-ramp, the on-ramp.
Oh, okay.
This,
Okay.
I said the on-ramp, this is going to be reconfigured. So this isn't really shown accurately. There's quite a bit of design that's going into this area.
I see. And so the parking lot is actually at the south end near the community garden.
Correct, that's correct.
Okay.
Near the community.
So is there any other, sorry,
Yeah.
is there any other parking along 39th north of, there will be no parking along 39th north of, yeah, that's.
There's parking, there's street parking on 39 currently. So there's, so we're going to do reconfiguration of the way that parking is there. But yeah, this is the way it's shown right now. But we do have to coordinate with our transportation department and reconfigure that a little bit.
Something like that. Thank you.
Sure. And my last question is, what is the rough time frame for the community garden installation?
Well, the community garden installation is currently slated. So let me give you the timeline as it exists. So the first phase of the project, which is 18 to 24 months roughly, will include the relinquishment. So the acquisition of lands from Caltrans and the demolition of the police storefront structure and just doing some temporary irrigation and landscaping in that area. The second phase will be to come to the community, talk about the rec building, go through kind of schematic 30% designs, and so that flesh this out a little more. So you guys see how it's actually going to be realized in construction documents. And then we go into CDs. So that'll probably be another 18 to 24 months to go to CDs. And so the community garden is going to be included in the construction process. There has been some discussion, depending on how funding comes available, for us to do different elements of the project at different times. But the consideration with that always is how efficient is that? How efficient is it to have it as a standalone versus as a part of a collective in terms of procuring a contractor? So Park and Rec is always evaluating, how efficient it is to spend the resources. So, but right now it's slated to be part of the park construction, which will follow these kind of two early phases of the project.
Okay.
And I have one quick question.
Yes.
Who's the landscape architect?
It's K2UA Landscape Architects.
Oh, okay, it's internal, okay.
Are there any further questions for Lydia?
I would like to remind Lydia that we need your post. We need you to make Jim Ross or Paul the host before you leave.
Okay, I'm going to do that now if there are no other questions.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, while she's passing the host back, at this time, I'd like to back up to item 8, which is John Elo-Rivera is here, along with Ben Mendoza, and we're looking forward to hearing his vision for Normal Heights. And so I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Sean.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Paul, where would you like it?
Where do you like? The camera is a 360 device. So it doesn't matter where you are to track where whoever's speaking.
Okay.
here work for everyone? Okay, great.
Oh, and I guess, yeah, that was.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Elo-Rivera. I am very proud to be the District 9 council member. I also serve as San Diego City Council President, and really, really excited to have Normal Heights as part of our district now that redistricting has happened. So I actually happy to take questions and make this more of a conversation. A couple of things that are worth noting, though. We are starting tomorrow, really kind of entering the peak of budget season. The mayor's proposed budget came out a couple weeks ago, but tomorrow is when the council starts diving in. Our budget review committee starts meeting tomorrow, and department by department, the council starts dissecting what's been proposed. We start having conversations around and asking questions, having conversations. And we'll lead up to the revision, which comes out on May 15th. And we strongly encourage the community to engage in that process. The council has two main responsibilities, budget and policy. Operations, that's mayor's side of the house, right, fair? He's the big boss on that front. Policy and budget, those are the council's jobs. And so the mayor proposes it, council approves it, and the community's engagement in that process is really, really important. A couple of things that are important to us that we included that I know are especially relevant in Normal Heights. One is weed abatement and fire prevention. That's very high on our list of priorities. That there's the abatement and prevention piece. There's also investment in the people who do that work and firefighting, right? So something that's been a huge priority of ours over the last couple of years is investing in city workers generally. Most of the problems that you have, things that you are frustrated by the city, not all, but most of them relate to there's simply not being enough people to do the work that needs to be done. That is the result of decades of disinvestment, and especially the last decade, disinvestment in city workers. I know that it became popular here in San Diego for a little while to scapegoat city employees and pretend like they were the cause of all the problems. Turns out you need workers to do work. It's not surprising to anyone in this room probably. And when the city stopped paying well, we stopped recruiting well, and we stopped retaining well. And we saw a huge exodus from departments across the city, including our fire department. My best friend is a firefighter from Orange County. I was just with him earlier today for his dad's funeral. And on the way out, when I was saying goodbye, he mentioned that he's heard that San Diego is doing better on this front. That we are no longer the farm club of Southern California's fire department. That is really important for ensuring that you all have a responsive, top of the notch, a top-notch fire department that you need and deserve in a community like Normal Heights is especially impacted by. On that front of investing in city workers, that is a huge priority in this year's budget. You're going to see that, whether that means librarians, our folks who are picking up our trash, who are filling our potholes, who are fixing our streetlights. We are investing in folks so we actually have the people required to do that work. I knew that was important before I started this job. It's become even more clear to me how important that is over the last couple of years. Streetlights is probably the single issue that we get the most calls and complaints about. And year one, I thought I did a great job because we got a bunch of money in the budget for streetlights, and I was really proud of myself. And I patted myself on the back, and I came to meetings like this and said, "Good job, we funded streetlights," and the streetlights are still on. And streetlights were off because there weren't workers to fix streetlights, and that backlog has only grown to over 300 days now. And that is a direct result of, again, not having the number of people required to do that work. The city's approach to those things for a long time had been contracting work out, but that requires an agreement from city workers to do that. And if you were doing a job and you knew you were being underpaid and you were overworked and you had a 30 or 40% vacancy rate in your department, and then the boss came to you and said, "So here's the deal. We're going to contract some of this work out and we're going to pay those folks better to do the same thing," how would you respond to that? Yeah. Fair, which is exactly how they responded as well until we started to pay them better, right? And so we just reached an agreement with the representatives of the folks who do that work. of the folks, of two of the bigger unions that represent our city workers. And I think that's gonna be transformative for getting things done in the city of San Diego. So I'm leading with that because it's all about our people. If we want to actually have things work and get done in this city. I know that there's other issues here. I'm sure we'll talk about them with respect to planning and zoning and building and whatnot. At the end of the day, I think that whether there's density or if you're in a rural community or a dense community or wherever you are, you have an expectation, a reasonable expectation to have basic city services work. And whether you're in a rural community or a dense community, nothing works without people. And so we are doing what we can to invest in our people in such a way that we will do a better job of recruiting employees, filling vacancies, and keeping people in the city of San Diego as employees for a long time, so that you can have your needs met, so that the basics of city government are done well. And we make some huge strides that, quite frankly, you and I think everyone involved have been frustrated about for some time. So I know that there are other talking points that I was supposed to hit, but
Sure.
let's just make it a conversation.
Sure. Just hitting on what you were saying about staffing, you recently absorbed us into D9. Were you given additional staff? How are you feeling?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Nobody asked that. Nobody ever asked how I'm feeling, at least in these meetings. Great. So just a little bit more about me. My wife and I live right across the freeway, just south of Adams in Kensington. We spend a ton of time in Elo Heights. It's where we go to the dog park. It's where we go to laundromat. Like, this is like a lot of our, we like eat and drink here. We spend a lot of time here. So I was really excited to have Elo Heights become part of our district. We didn't get additional staff for that. I have some additional staff right now because I serve as council president. But that additional staff is meant to deal with the responsibilities that come with running the council meetings, the agendas, all of that stuff. Leading the legislative affairs of the council, make sure they're coordinating with the mayor. That's what the additional staff is for. It's not on the rep side. Good news though, you've got Ben. Ben is, obviously, if you've met Ben, you know that Ben is awesome. Like Ben is a lot more popular than I am, and which makes a lot of sense. Ben's a lot nicer than I am, and there's a lot of reasons to like Ben more. So we didn't get additional staff, but what I will say is I really appreciated working with Elo Heights so far. Appreciate the dialogue. Even what I've seen is that even when there's just an opinion, we're like having a dialogue. I appreciate that. I will say this: I entered office in December of 2020. It was like kind of the peak of the pandemic, right? And we went a solid year and even longer before I was able to get into a room with some of the folks who I was conversing with, and that. Bluntly, that sucked. Like it was all happening via Zoom, right? Or people saying angry things in chats on Zoom. And it's just a very different thing when we can stand or sit in a room together and have a conversation. And so I've appreciated that, even though I have not been able to be here physically present because of trying to manage the 155,000 constituents that we have here and the roles and responsibilities of being a council president and whatnot. I know that Ben is here and Ben is in the room with you, and that I think is incredibly valuable. I've been able to get in the room with some other folks in different spaces. We just came from the parent teacher organization meeting at Adams. That was fantastic. It's just a very different thing when we can be here together. And so I want to say thank you for convening in person, but also thank you for how you've interacted with our office thus far, because it feels like, again, even when we're not fully in agreement, it's productive and we're able to learn and at least know where we can find some agreement and where we're trying to head.
I was gonna say, when can you expect to ramp up this cleanup, because Greg and I were like Saturdays back. We usually go to the park and clean up there. I've seen a couple other citizens up and down Adams that kind of spend their mornings doing some trash, cleaning up all of the normal life.
Yeah. For something like that, let me circle back, because I don't want to give you what you will find about me is I refuse to make promises I can't keep. And so I don't that frustrates my wife sometimes as well. But we will circle back so that we can try to get you an idea. We're going to need a lot more investment in that kind of the basics of keeping our parks pristine, right? I'll say this, I got into a very heated argument last year during budget season around what was a controversial issue at that time, which was the street vendor issue at Balboa Park. And the reason I was very passionate about that was, in my opinion, there is a lot more concern and focus on, and Balboa Park is great. It's one of the reasons, literally one of the reasons why I moved to San Diego. I was like, it's incredible. And from my perspective, most folks who live in District 9 love their park in their neighborhood just as much, if not more, than Balboa Park. Just as much as the beaches. And I don't think that those places are more important than Ward Canyon, right? And so what I want to see is District 9 respected in the same way as our, treasured, as our other city treasures, right? So that is an ongoing effort. This city has made huge strides in the last couple of years in terms of changing the way that we can and do fund parks, rec centers, and the way that money can be distributed across the city, so that it is no longer locked into the wealthiest neighborhoods, the newest parts of the city, and can actually be distributed and into some of the older communities, more lesser resource communities here in San Diego. That's all part of that puzzle. I just don't want to tell you that we're 1 month away from Ward Canyon becoming the Balboa Park of District 9.
It's more than that. I mean, it is good to have our Saturdays back, but at the same time, we do things like we put things on the Get It Done app, and we're expecting things to get done. We start having the opposite effect. People put a lot of claims in the Get It Done, and then just isn't staff to take care of these problems, and then you end up with people saying that this is a app that doesn't do anything to the city, that the city doesn't really care and they're doing anything. So we've got the tools.
Like what you just said is part of why I think it's so important that we have people in place, right? The city did a really good job of promoting things in the past and not doing things. And when you promote something like Get It Done, and it doesn't actually get anything done, the lesson learned from the community is, like, it's all a sham, right? And it's a farce, and why should I invest in the city? The city doesn't do things, they just roll things, they do a promotional piece and then they walk away from it. That is how city government in San Diego has functioned for a long time. The council and the mayor have been very committed to trying to actually make things work. And it is incredibly frustrating because it's a slog. And like every layer you peel back, you're like, oh, so this was broken as well. But I cannot stress how important the people component of this was. The vacancy rates that we saw throughout the city are and have been crippled. And that was just kind of washed over because it was a difficult conversation, because the well had been poisoned and people told this is, you're not getting city services because of pensions, because of a librarian somewhere making too much retirement. That was such crap. Like that was a lie. That is not why things weren't working here in San Diego. And it poisoned the city as a place to work and as a place that was could be well governed.
Question. Yes. Thanks very much for coming. I appreciate it. It gives us an opportunity to see the guy who makes some of the decisions for us. I'm a retired city employee. I serve as a retired city employee on MEA, municipal employees.
So you really would bang your fist on the table. Yeah.
I hear every month when I go to those meetings that they're frustrated because citizens are frustrated because they can't get things done. And I appreciate your emphasis and realization that if you want people to work for you, you got to pay them a fair wage or they're going to find another place to work. Are you, another subject though, we're having some rallies around the city about that you may be aware of. I don't know if you're going to show up or not, speak, but a lot of us are concerned with what seems to be uncontrolled infill efforts. We're specifically in Normal Heights concerned about a project called the Mars project, which I think I brought to your attention. This group has previously stated that we're in favor of helping with the housing prices, bringing rents and housing prices down in any way we can that's appropriate, especially with development along the major transit corridors. but our little neighborhood is not a major transit corridor. And this Mars project not only is huge, but my understanding is that each of the units, 70 or so of them in the project, are small enough that there will be no developer impact fees coming to the community. In other words, when I put in a water heater or do a expansion in my house, all of us, we get a permit and pay a certain amount of developer impact fees, which helps with the infrastructure of our community. Apparently, that project is not going to, and it really sticks in our craw that we're going to be bringing in so many people. I hope you realize my frustration. You're not going to fix it tonight, or will you?
I'm not gonna fix that. Well done now. Good try. I will say this though, so I recognize and appreciate the frustration. One thing I do want to mention on dip fees though, which is important, is the way the city's changed its policy on dip fees, right? So, yeah, so they can be, meaning they can be spread out throughout the city. So your only opportunity to have development impact fees come in is not from the Mars project, right? It's from projects across the city, and we are doing that in a way which this was, we did it with development impact fees after we'd already done it with our park funding, right? Previously, there were lock boxes across the city. Development happened somewhere, the money stayed there. That might make sense on its face, but it really, really perpetuated the inequities in the city, especially when it comes to parks and infrastructure. You go to newer parts of the city, and you will see pristine parks. You will think you left San Diego, actually. You will think you're in a different city. And that is not all right. And so we've changed those policies so that those lock boxes are no more. And this isn't the only chance to get the impact fees and the investments you need to get the infrastructure we need to absorb density, right? So that these things go hand in hand, right? Do I wish they were paying billions of dollars so we could just fix our backlog all at once? Yes. That's not the case, but that's not our only opportunity.
Thank you.
We're recording here?
Yes, we are.
Okay, well, I know we're recording here. I just want to make sure that if everyone else is good with the recording happening over there as well.
Yeah, we got 19 people online watching.
Yeah, so in general, we don't have a policy about recording, other than that we announce that we do record the meetings for 4 minutes, and we post the video on our website. Mike.
Hi, you may recall that I was at the SDA meeting. I brought a fireman who was a survivor of the Normal Heights fire in 1985. You probably weren't old enough at that time to, but us crusty guys definitely were part of it. I literally had to save most of what was the remnants of a woman's house, was in there driving down back and forth, and it was a harrowing experience. One of the concerns that we have about this project is the fact that we don't have enough water volume in Normal Heights. And so this building is like the Mars project, which I'm very much concerned about, is basically a safety hazard. If we didn't have enough water to put out the fire, the damage that took out 79 homes and damaged another 100 homes in our community, and nothing has been brought to us since then, how is it we're going to be able to put out a fire on a 7-story building within our community? So the fireman that came with me, he's the only fireman because he's retired who's willing to speak about it. I'm good friends with most of the folks at Station 18 who don't want their names used, and I'm talking to the city employer. But one of our concerns is definitely that what would have to happen is it would be about a 5-alarm fire, in many cases a 7-alarm fire, and the firemen are going to have to bring their own stuff, and they're going to have to work their way up tunnels and things of that nature to make their way to the top. Is a high likelihood that people who are on the 7th floor would perish in a fire. But there's a lot of other issues associated with the project. One of the concerns that I have as it relates to that is that none of us here had heard of complete communities. It was something that was passed during COVID, and it's not like there was a Brown Act involved or anything of that nature, but we never had an opportunity to be involved in that. And it gives so much carte blanche to the developers in the neighborhood. And so it's something that we're really opposed to. I think the Adams County Business Association, the planning group sent letters in about it. We have 3,000 signatures from folks in the neighborhood which I have at the shop, you can see them. And people are very much concerned about it. It's one of the reasons we're putting together a rally this weekend is to make the city aware of that. We've also, obviously, we're very much aware that there is a housing shortage in the area, and we would like, as a planning group, to become involved in this thing, when those decisions are made going forward. Right now, as you know, Tony Atkins sponsored SB 10, it's a friend of mine. I totally agree with her every single thing, and I think the overall idea behind the thing is pretty good, but it really doesn't work in San Diego, and I think that planning groups need to be involved in trying to help make decisions about that. The fact that you can put 14 units for a single family housing home is awful. So there's a lot that we'd like to speak to you about in regards to that.
Yeah.
And obviously you'll probably be hearing it at the rallies that will be coming up on Saturday.
So we have there's a lot there. So.
Yeah, I have to say a lot, sorry.
The safety concerns, we said, oh, this is more than mayor's. I don't have the authority to do this, but I will ask that someone come out and speak to safety. I think that any safety concerns need to be addressed, and I want to make sure that those aren't dismissed. So ma'am, did I say something?
Well, I really, I can't, I've been in so many meetings voting on these different STAs and what have you. And there was a whole presentation about building and fire severity zones. And yet you and the other 4 people who voted with you just went right ahead and
But
voted.
ma'am, yes, there was a presentation. There also were technical experts employed by the city, and none of them raised that concern. So I think you can understand, well, maybe not, but we have to.
No, I can't.
You can't, so that's fine, but if you were on the other side of the issue and I listened to a PowerPoint and not the technical experts that the city has employed to do the analysis of these things, I think you might also say what was going through your head.
But we still don't have the water pressure. I think in the state,
Understood.
we had
So-
a major fire
Which
against.
is why I said,
Terrible.
which is why I said, I'm gonna ask that the city staff come to speak to the safety concerns. That technical part, you don't want me addressing that. That's like far too like deep into the details. In terms of explaining exactly how you're gonna get the water pressure you need to get, right? I have to absorb at a high level, right? I'm just telling you how policy decisions are made, right?
But you're proposing building density without solving the problem,
Okay, so
whether it's
that's right.
parking or transit
Yeah.
or water pressure or green canopy. You're proposing charging ahead
Yeah.
with building incredible density in inappropriate places
So,
without solving any of these problems.
okay, so understand.
That's it.
We have to do multiple things at once, all right? We have to do all of these things at once because there have been decades of policy failures in San Diego. In the ideal, we would have slowly built up to a place where we have the number of homes that we need to meet the demand, and we wouldn't have an affordability crisis where I just heard from the principal at Adams Avenue, or from Adams Elementary, that they are losing funding because their Title I students can no longer afford to live in Normal Heights. That is happening as we speak, right? So I appreciate that this room has acknowledged that there's a housing crisis. That I really appreciate that. In the ideal, we would have met the demand as a group. We didn't do that. In the ideal, we would have funded our infrastructure system over the years. So there wasn't a $3 billion backlog of something like stormwater. I don't know what to tell you folks about the last couple generations of San Diego leaders. There is not a day that goes by where I'm not pissed off about something that they didn't do or that they did wrong. Like you name it, and there are a variety of issues, right? And so now we're in a situation where we have to solve for multiple problems at once. You're right that we don't have the infrastructure we need. You're right that we don't have the public transportation system we need. You're right that we don't have the amount of housing that we need. However, I have to make decisions based on what is the #1 priority in this moment. And I know that there are people who are living on the streets. There are people who cannot afford to continue to live in San Diego. Housing is a fundamental need for everyone. And that is like priority 1 along with safety. So I want to get those safety concerns addressed, but I cannot wait for San Diego to catch up on $3 billion in stormwater backlog and it's $250 million in streetlight backlog to start addressing the housing crisis. Because if we wait that long, We will have nobody in San Diego anymore who does not make 6 figures who can afford to live here. And I'm just not gonna sit idly by and watch that happen.
What you're saying though, if it's a concern to me, is that everybody, the mayor, the whole city council said, we are gonna provide water infrastructure because this should never happen again. Of course, that particular type of fire that we had way back when, we've kind of resolved that now. We have fixed wing planes, we have helicopters and things that can drop water and solve that type of fire. But this kind that we have here, trust me, if you don't dump a bunch of water on the top of that building, it's designed to repel, and people inside are gonna die.
So
And
again, that, I'm asking staff if they will show up to address the safety concerns. I want you all to have answers to those questions. You are not going to get a super detailed technical answer from me as to why that meets the safety. I do know this, that it is not particularly easy to build things and get things permitted in the state of California. And so there's certainly some level of safety plan that is has to be done in order to get that thing approved.
I want to do a quick time check. We have 2 more questions on the floor. And I think I have one, you have one. So I think that would be 4. Full? Okay, go ahead.
Most people in San, well, in the whole state, we appreciate the homeless and the poor people who want housing and so on and so forth. But what you're proposing is not going to help them at all. Absolutely not. Because the developers and the people that are getting the interest off of this, they are going to make the money. It's not going to be affordable housing. Absolutely not going to be affordable housing.
So you're partially right.
No, I'm
No,
totally.
you're not totally right, because part of the reason, so homelessness and housing shortage, they go hand in hand. Every study shows that, right? There are places that have similar levels of addiction, if not worse, in San Diego, that have much lower rates of homelessness. There are places that have mental illness rates. San Diego is not an outlier when it comes to.
Those buildings you're building.
Hold on, I'll get there, right.
They can't go there.
Let me get there a second. You all know how the free market works, right? If there is a shortage of any sort of resource, right, you have a bidding war, right? I just took an incredible amount of heat from the apartment industry for regulating tenant protections, for significantly strengthening tenant protection. I am not their friend right now. They're very mad at me. So the idea that I am doing this for them it flies in the face of reality based on the vote that the ordinance that I put forward with my name on it last week. I took an incredible amount of heat for that. So long as we have a shortage of housing, there is going to be a housing crisis, an affordability crisis. That does not mean that, and look, one of the ways that I want to address this is by getting the public sector more engaged in building housing again. We've completely gone away from that. We've made this thing that everyone needs, housing, everyone needs it, a completely privately owned commodity. And that does not work. And so again, we're trying to solve for multiple problems here at once. There is not a legislative agenda that I've got my hands on, that I've not advocated for the military building housing for their active duty and their veterans. They just are not doing that. They're throwing $3,500 vouchers out to their service members, which works for them. But what is that, if you're a property owner, what does that tell you as a India floor for rent in San Diego? $3,500, right? So these things do go hand in hand. And so while that building will not house people who are currently experiencing homelessness, it will alleviate some of the pressure on the housing market, which does have a role to play in making housing affordable at some point in San Diego. That is not the solution. There's no panacea here, folks. I wish there was.
This is not a debate. From there, wherever they're at now, and they move into that unit, the owner of the unit they moved out of is going to upgrade that son of a gun to the hill, and then the rent's
So
going to.
that is exactly what we were looking to address in my ordinance, right?
So you can't stop them.
I can't stop it, but I can slow it down, right? And no, you're right, it's not, which is why we're trying to pull every lever we can. So how do we actually address that? In my opinion, we address that by providing a true, like a publicly owned option, right? So that it is not a completely privately owned commodity, which is how it's working right now. This is a national problem and it is a huge statewide crisis. We are trying to, again, there are multiple policy levers that need to be pulled on this front here in San Diego.
On the question of strategy, because that's where you operate, is at the strategic level. Does your office have any documentation about the economics of housing and how you're approaching that in terms of plans or all the things that you've been talking about? Maybe there's some documentation that Ben could share with us and we can get that on.
We'll be happy. There's one book in particular that I would strongly encourage folks to read around, and Ben can share that.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, when you do the research, homelessness and housing prices and the availability of housing are inextricably linked. And that does not mean that everybody who's experiencing homelessness right now, that their only problem that they are currently facing is economic.
Sure.
But the outlier, when you look at the data, when you start to compare the things, is not addiction or mental illness. It is how expensive housing is.
And a question from the second row.
I've got one more question.
If you don't mind.
I've been in touch with Ben, my daughter and I, and we've got a mess next door to us from a Bye Bye San Diego guy. And they're telling us they can put 14 units on that property.
Which
There's only two parking
is this on East Mountain View? North Mountain View? Okay, would you talk to me after the meeting about that particular location? And I can work with you on getting that information into the right hands.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. I will say this, if there's 14 units going on that property, 7 of those have to be deed restricted or affordable. Right? And now everyone in this room, when you say, well, what's affordable?
Yeah.
There's an actual definition for that. And you and I might agree that it's not actually affordable, but anyone else in this room a renter? Yeah, I am. Okay. Nothing's affordable. Nothing's affordable. Right? So this is part of the problem we have in this conversation. I say, you look at the rent and you say it's $2,000, that's not affordable. We say, we agree. Also, that's a better price than we would find in many other places, right? And so, by law, by the city's law, if there's 14 going in, I'm not saying that that's okay, but I am saying 7 of those have to be deed restricted affordable. And so there will be 7 homes in that place that have to be affordable per and defined by the laws in terms of what counts for affordable.
There's 2 parking places in this idea.
10 or 15.
Yeah, okay. And second row, please.
So my question is really a comment now. I think you've got to the heart of the issue here, that the problem that we're having of homelessness is really not addressable or fixable by private development. I think society is going to have to move to a different model of providing housing for people that is not provided by people who make money off of it. Many other countries have council housing, all this sorts of things. Certainly not something we're going to do in the next year or 2. But if we want to solve homelessness, it's going to have to be solved by a different method.
Here.
That's it. There's one last component of that I want to mention. Even our affordable housing that gets built in America, it's still profit driven. Because I was on the board of an affordable nonprofit developer, Community Housing Works, before I served on the city council. Where do you think Community Housing Works went to borrow money? For profit banks, right? Yeah. Which wanted a certain level of return on that investment. Everything we build is profit driven, even from a nonprofit affordable developer. That is a problem, right? So until we start to address that, and I think that needs the public involved, not just the city. Again, the military needs. I was in DC 2 weeks ago. I got to go to the Pentagon for the first time, and every question they asked, I said how. It was like I was a broken record, right? For their active duty and their veterans. UCSD is actually doing a great job right now of building housing for their students and their faculty and staff. They I think are the one institution in the region that's owning their responsibility to build housing. I had a meeting with some folks from Amazon. They're very proud of themselves. They're going to bring down jobs. And I said, are you gonna bring housing? Are you gonna build housing for those folks? Because otherwise you're just gonna price out people who live here right now. So just know that everywhere I go, I am beating that drum. I completely agree. We have to do that. The model is broken and we are seeing the devastating consequences of that on a daily basis.
That's great.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you being here. I guess my question is, what tools does the city have from a strategic perspective to handle some of the really great quarters like El Cajon Boulevard, which I think slices through a significant part of your district, where there's significant underdevelopment of those facilities. And I think it's just frustrating to drive down there and see used car lots, you know, one-story buildings for an opportunity that, to me, that boulevard provides. Has tons of transportation, a lot of amenities there. It's just really, and I'm not against the Mars project completely, but to see a proposal put in for a 7-story, what else do I say? Single unit, like studios that are like less than 400 square feet with no parking, that's not affordable, like more than $1,000. So it's just kind of like, do we have any tools in addition to you bring up the public sectors and availability? How would that, as a citizen, I just feel frustrated every
So
time.
we're trying to create incentives, right, to make it easier to.
So what are they? I mean, when do you see those being?
Well, some of them are being used for the Mars project.
Okay.
Right? So that, like, we're trying, right? And I have similar feelings on wanting to see El Cajon Boulevard developed in a way that makes more sense.
And they want it.
Well, yes and no. So the College Area Business Association wants it, the business folks want it, but let me add this. The mayor and I, almost a year ago, stood in a room in the El Cerrito community, and took a tremendous amount, it was actually at the College Area, the library, and we took basically 2 hours of getting yelled at for a project that's going to be built on El Cajon Boulevard, with housing that's going to be for people who previously experienced homelessness. And it's deeply important. So, like, literally the thing you are describing, right, is happening there. It's not Alpha Project. Path is the service provider that is involved in that. And we're getting beat up about it. So I just, so just so you know, and I'm not, look, I'm not asking for sympathy, but wherever it gets built, whether it's El Cajon Boulevard or University or downtown San Diego, someone's going to yell at us about it. And so it is sometimes a little difficult to suss through that, right? When we're doing the exact thing that the folks in this room say we should be doing, we get yelled at over there. So I just want to point that part out because it's not being embraced as you might hope it would, right, in some of those places. That being said, we're going to continue to advocate for more of the development to happen on El Cajon Boulevard and University. There's something that we're working on, we're very excited about on University. Can't talk about it too much quite yet because it's just coming together as a concept, but with the public sector working with philanthropy to lean in to create more housing opportunities on University Avenue in City Heights. So those things are in the works as well, and we want to do more on that front.
Cool, thank you.
So I'm going to ask a question about your strategy for the missing middle.
Yep.
And just let you riff on that, and then we'll take some. We'll go to the Zoom, see if anybody on Zoom needs to ask a question.
Yeah. So everyone here familiar with the missing middle? Paul, you want to talk?
Okay. We talk a lot about affordable housing, which we've been talking about. With the subsidized housing. We obviously have enough luxury units in San Diego, but what we're missing is where do you raise your family? It's not in a studio apartment at the Mars project. There's also multi-generational families in City Heights, and they have, grandma, grandpa, uncle, and they want to have 3, 4, even 5 bedrooms in order to sustain that family unit. And that's the piece that's not getting built right now, nationwide.
So, perfect description, big proponent of that. So some of our nonprofit affordable developers are doing that. Community Housing Works has a couple of projects in City Heights, in particular with those 4 or 5 bedroom units for multi-generational families. We want to see more of that. This is a classic example of where we need those larger units that are going to be more affordable. That's going to require either public investment or philanthropic investment. There's just very little money to be made there, right? Now, the other portion of the missing middle, right? We're just thinking about kind of that middle income family, right? And the housing that's not being produced on that front. We're the civic redevelopment project. One of the areas of emphasis there is middle income housing. So we prioritize that, and we'll see what comes back to us in terms of if there's responsive bids on that front. But those market pressures, I actually think really are probably most applicable to that middle income. So we talk about starting to alleviate the burden in terms of alleviate some of the pressure on the housing stock generally. I actually think the place where that pressure, where the relief will be felt first is at the middle level. Because right now, those are the folks who are competing with higher income people. And what ends up happening is they end up holding on to the smaller, less, more affordable unit until they can jump way up, right? And there is very little opportunity to gradually slide up. So the hope is, the strategy is, that's what you asked, is that through increasing supply generally, the middle folks will start to feel some relief. But again, we're going to need that public investment. And I think that there's going to be some opportunities to support that in the next year. That's a different hat. It's the campaign hat. It's not what my council president hat. We don't want to cross any lines there, but I think there'll be some opportunities here. I'm sure I'll be back to speak to you about that.
As a insight housing part of that, I know they have a project at 2911 Adams Avenue, and they're doing the snap together, build it in a factory model, which is bringing the cost of construction down so that they can actually create affordable units.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning. So just later on to the project in Elkhorn Boulevard that I was on Elkhorn that I was talking about, also a modular prefabricated development as well. So like name the things that you all advocate for and that's happening there. And it's like each one of those makes people even more angry. There was one other thing I wanted to talk about on the development front. And Francis, is somewhat related to the comment you made about public transportation. There's another about public transportation or the lack thereof in San Diego, and others have alluded to that as well. So there's another thing happening here in the region that I think is important. And San Diego, for a very long time, had an very undersized voice in our regional plan. And that meant that cities like Del Mar and Coronado had a very outsized voice in regional planning. That had a huge impact on San Diego. So I'm vice chair at Sandag, and one of the places where I get the most heat is in that seat because I am unapologetically demanding that San Diego be proportionally represented. And there was a bill a few years back called AB 805 that created what's referred to as a weighted vote at MTS and Sandag. That weighted vote is nothing more than San Diego really proportionally voting in accordance with our population in the region. And that makes the small cities in the region irate. I don't care. That's not my job to care, right? My job is to represent San Diego, and we are doing that unapologetically there. And Francis, the reason I mention this is because the last several decades, you've had small cities being able to basically dictate how regional planning was going to happen. And so what do you think was not funded well? Things that big cities need, like a public transportation system, right? And so we're about to go through a regional planning process, and I'm going to want to make sure that San Diego is proportionally represented in that process in such a way that drives resources and investment into the city in a way in accordance with our population, right? And that has not happened in the past. It's very contentious and controversial when we use that weighted vote, but I refuse to have. I keep saying Del Mar because it's the most egregious example. 3,500 people in the city of Del Mar, and they think that they should have the same voice in regional planning as the city of San Diego with 1.4 million people. That is offensive. It is like deeply, deeply offensive, in my opinion, right? And so we have that fight at Sandag, and when we have that fight, when we win, that allows us to plan for and invest in the city's transportation system in a way that is much more closely related to the number of people that we actually have here.
So to give a sense of scale, 3,500 people is about half of what Normal Heights is south of Adams.
It's about how many would.
Yeah. Or north of Dollar.
Anybody on Zoom?
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure,
So-
and then I want to see if anybody on the
Oh,
Zoom.
okay. So, I mean, that sounds really promising, maybe. But what is the kind of timeline I mean, we need public transportation yesterday.
Yeah, well, so we're doing some things to, one, to fight to not have a reduction in our investment in, hopefully Senator Atkins helps us out there. We don't have a huge reduction in the investment that we currently have in public transportation. So regional planning, that's long-term planning, right? But we have been able to drive certain dollars, to reallocate certain dollars, and this is again controversial, right? So there were funding plans passed in the early, like almost 20 years ago now, right? And the North County coastal communities are going to want those invested in up there. And there's going to be a fight that says, well, we have not accounted for the needs of the people south of the 8 in particular here in the San Diego region. We completely ignored them. We might need to reallocate some of that, down here. That's going to require a fight. I'm more than happy to have it because, like, I'm here to represent San Diego. Can I promise you we will win that one? No, but I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure that we do. We've done things to start to try to accelerate ridership here in San Diego. A big part of that is making sure that young people start to ride. This is a decade-long effort that actually started in the City Heights community to bring free transportation passes to San Diego youth. We finally won last year. Every young person now, under 18 years of age, gets to ride public transportation for free now in San Diego. We also secured passes for foster youth and former foster youth at 24 years old. So, and we're working closely with the universities as well to try to increase ridership there. All of these things are happening simultaneously. Again, in the ideal, San Diego would have been proportionally represented at Sandad. Our regional planning would have been done with our proportional voice in mind. We would have invested in these things and we would have them operating now. When I say we're trying to pull multiple levers at once, that's what I mean, is we're trying to make up for lost ground on a variety of fronts. That's not easy to do. I get frustrated with it as well. But know that we're not dismissing the problem. We just can't solve for all of them all at once.
Yeah. Danielle Lemon, if I pronounce the name correctly, she's online. If you would. go ahead and unmute.
Yes, thank you. It's pronounced Layman. I asked this question at the Park and Rec Board council member, and they weren't able to come up with any numbers yet. So maybe you can help with planning. It has to do with the diff fees that you mentioned earlier that are getting shared more equally to communities south of 8. When the TPAs went to SDAs, about 5,000 acres of land in the city of San Diego has now been taken off of the diff fees roll. So I'm wondering, has there been any kind of analysis of how much less the diff fees will be in the future, maybe for the next 1 to 5 years? Thank you.
That is a good question. I'm definitely not going to do that math in my head right now. Let us ask. That does seem very, very speculative because there's a lot of variables in that question that would seem extremely difficult to predict for. That doesn't mean that there hasn't been some estimation. Perhaps it has been, but again, I'm not going to try to do that off the top of my head. We will ask someone if that's been done.
Go ahead.
right? We can maybe create a protected bike and walkway. Make our sidewalks a little more protected using planters or trees. That will make a lot of people happy all at once. Trees aren't really meant to be in planters. Okay, well, you know, let's get to yes. And so there's a lot of that, kind of trying to push through the machine. And folks are just doing their job at the city, but we're trying to fight that fight to make it easier to get trees into our communities, because it's like one of those things that like almost everyone likes and wants is more trees.
So back at the beginning, you had mentioned staffing levels, and the city arborist, as I understand, has an office of one.
Yeah, so I wonder if it's changed. Not only that, so there, and this is I need to get going in a second.
Yes.
And I need to get going. And I'll tie this to something bigger as well. Part of when we talk about understaffing, that has a few different roles. It's like the people who can actually do the work, right? But also the people who can communicate about what being done. So the arborist, I say this like in a kind of, not the most articulate way, tree guy, right? The tree guy is then left to do the communication work. Well, I don't know if we should expect the tree guy to be the communication guy as well. And when the tree guy is trying to be the communication guy, sometimes it doesn't go great. And we also have like the planning guy or woman trying to be the communication person, and that sometimes doesn't go great either. We've been really big at, so we got this mid-city community plan update coming, right? And I come from my background in community organizing and advocacy. And so even when I disagree with the goal that folks have, I don't want them to ever feel like the process was such that they, in good faith, engaged in it, participated, did their job, and then their work was ignored. Because to me, wearing the council member hat, if I was to design a process to piss people off, that would be the one, right? Just, hey, you all spend a couple of years working on this, doing your best, and at the end of it, we're gonna just throw that out. That cannot be how people feel. And I know that that's how people have felt. So we've advocated for the planning department to hire folks who have that background in community engagement that can be upfront and honest from day one. What can actually happen here, right? And guide people toward those the necessary outcomes in a way that is authentic and doesn't leave them feeling like they didn't have a voice or they wasted their time.
Okay.
So whether that's the arborist and his team of one, right, being able to communicate with you all about why a tree can or can't be planted somewhere, or the planning department explaining why and how certain goals need to be met in certain ways. We've got to do more to make sure the city is staffed up in such a way that, again, gets work done and can communicate to you all about what work is getting done, when it's getting done, and why it has to get done in certain ways that might boggle the mind and be extremely frustrating absent a coherent explanation.
Okay, well, we are here to create a two-way conduit. So, if you have your arborist or anybody else who wants to communicate, they can come here and they can interface with a lot of different organizations besides this board. We have our mailing list website. We are standing by to communicate down a two-way street. So it's not just us expressing our frustrations, but also listening to what you have so we can get that information back out to the community.
Appreciate that.
So thank you for coming.
I appreciate you all very much. Again, I genuinely appreciated the approach that Normal Heights has taken. Again, even when there's frustration or not total agreement, I appreciate your willingness to engage in conversation and the actual dialogue that's happening. I do hope we just I do hope that we can continue that, and I do very much appreciate you all being engaged tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just left my cards up here at the front in case anyone wants to get in contact.
I already have it. Just to clarify, John, so you think it's okay to, you would build your house.
After, yeah.
I don't understand the question.
Yeah.
Foundation is infrastructure. You're saying you would build your house, build the foundation.
I think that
So next up on the agenda,
certain times.
we have,
Well, it just doesn't feel like authentic conversation.
We need to get going.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna.
Take it outside. I think it went down to the battery.
Oh.
The battery.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure. I think we'll finish up.
As chair, can you ask him to take it outside?
We're gonna call order here and bring us back into the meeting. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I'm thanking him
Okay.
for his great question.
You didn't answer it anyway. I answered. So I'm not gonna walk out as I'm getting shot in the back here. Look, folks, shot in the back. Well, we were getting shit on. Give it Scott.
Give him a second to call. Listen, just give him a second.
Folks, I just said it. I acknowledged every problem that we have. Okay, and so if you want me to say, if what an answer is saying yes to your demand, you're not gonna get it, because it's not. Right? Like, I'm not gonna say yes to things I can't do, or that I don't think the city should do. What I'm going to do is acknowledge the problems that we have. You're right, the infrastructure is not good enough. I own that. I said that. That's not a problem that just occurred right now. It's decades in the making. We need to do that. And we need to address the housing crisis. So no, we are not. Here's my answer. We are not going to wait for all of San Diego's infrastructure to be perfect before we allow housing to be built. Because you know what will happen if we do that? This will be a city where only millionaires can live. And I refuse to be a resident of or a council member of a community that only allows for millionaires to live here, or people who were fortunate enough to have purchased property a few decades back. I'm not gonna do that. So that's the 1 minute version of the answer, right? I don't think I've avoided a single question in this conversation. You might not like what you heard, but I do not dodge questions. I do not make promises that I cannot keep, and I do not dodge questions, for better and for worse.
You're a good answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up would be item 9C on the agenda is County Supervisor Fletcher and their office said that they would not be participating at this time, but they look forward to participating in the future. Next is State Senator Atkins is Christopher Vallejo. I'm here. Yes, thank you.
Stouffer.
Today, I know we're a little bit over agenda, so I'll keep it brief. I want to talk about what the state is up to and what Senator Atkins is up to. Similar to the city, the state is also underway with their negotiations process as far as what the budget. So right now, as the Senate President Pro Tem, my boss, Senator Atkins, is using her caucus to negotiate with the governor to ensure a budget that's equitable for our communities and that delivers on the services and promises that our community and our constituents need. Part of that is securing funding here to bring back to San Diego to ensure that our local agencies like the city and the county have the resources and the tools they need to get the job that they want to accomplish done as well. So we're partners with the city, we're partners with the county, and certainly in her leadership capacity, she's making sure that San Diego gets the attention that it deserves when it comes to our statewide budget. Part of that conversation is last year's California Dream for All funding. We secured $500 million for that program. Now the governor has tied up 200 million of it. What we saw was his proposal to scale that down a little bit this year. So we're actively fighting to restore that funding, especially because we saw that being such a popular service when it rolled out this month. And for those of you who don't know, that's the first time homebuyer program with the state's shared equity component, which will allow more people, renters, young homeowners, the opportunity to enter the housing market, to benefit from appreciation of owning a home, and the other benefits that come along with homeownership. So we're actively fighting for that. We're actively fighting to make sure that the budget is equitable and that it services our constituents. And then in tangent, we're also in the swing of things when it comes to legislation. The senator carries less bills because she's in charge of her caucus, but we do have a number of bills related to expanding and protecting reproductive health and abortion. We have a bill streamlining the housing permitting process for certain types of units. And we have a bill that provides local cities with oversight over the sheriff's departments when needed as a tool to offer accountability and oversight. So those are some of the legislative things we're working on. We're neck deep in the budget negotiation. And then as a reminder, I just want to offer that our office is here to help constituents with state-related casework. This might be the EDD, PMP, ABC, Franchise Tax Board, a whole slew of alphabet letters in order. But we're here ready to help. And as community leaders, we'd encourage you and ask you to share those with your networks as well, because you have an office here that's ready to help be a liaison with the state departments up in Sacramento. And we're happy to put a face to the issue and help resolve those issues on your behalf. So with that, I'll close. Again, my name is Stoper Vallejo with the Office of Senator Tony Atkins. I'll leave my cards on the table, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Sure. You mentioned streamlined housing permits. So what's the
I think it's 510, just a cleanup bill on a previous SB 9 bill that would just others. What we saw was some cities across the state were being bad faith actors when it came to permitting. It just makes it consistent across the state, so local agencies have to follow by the same rules.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Too many.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll make sure your contact, I believe, is in the agenda as far as a phone number, and we'll try to make sure you get your email address into the minutes.
Yeah, email is preferred. So I appreciate you guys emailing me. I'll be happy to get the right information to you guys. And for whatever reason, if you guys I like to say that if folks don't know if it's a state or a city or a federal issue, reach out to me. I might not be the person to answer your question, but I can probably point you to the right direction to someone who does.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Next is Assembly Member Chris Ward. I'm not sure. Is Chris here? Okay, he was here last.
Mayor's reference.
Yes.
I don't know if I was on the list.
No, but we'll put you on. You can take Assembly Member Ward's spot.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Office Mayor Victoria. Kind of hard to follow after speaking, but just really wanted to reiterate that we're beginning of budget season. I did want to highlight a couple of dates for you all. Regarding budget, there will be 2 special council meetings taking place tomorrow, Wednesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. and next Wednesday, May 10th at 6 p.m. These are special meetings that are being posted for folks that can't attend meetings during the day. They will be an opportunity for you all to provide comments, suggestions. We'll advocate for any sort of funding that you're interested in. And if you don't agree, this is the time to do the negotiation and really make that push in the community. Ask for anything that you're interested, particularly in the community. Just wanted to also reiterate the proposed budget does focus a lot on a couple of really key factors, one of them being public safety. So wanted to highlight that this is the 3rd year in a row that we fully funded public safety budget. That includes police department and fire department. There are new facilities that are being funded that would be civilian roles to create, sort of do that administrative work to free up some of the officers. As you know, we are throughout the city and all departments, we're experiencing a staff shortage. We are doing what we can as far as making sure that the departments are fully funded. We are running into a lot of different issues across the board. The city did just have its first career fair last month. Sorry, this was in March. Can't remember what day of the week it is, but it was really, really successful. So we're looking to replicate that again. We're always hiring police, electricians, if you know anyone. We are also looking to, again, like the council president mentioned, we did enter the agreement to be able to hire outside of the city to bring in extra workers to work on the backlog. It's about a 3-year backlog on street repairs. So it'll only help alleviate something, but it's not going to be the end all, and we're not going to see it. But it will help make sure that any area, there was one that just came up at another meeting where we've gone back to that intersection multiple times to fix that particular street light, but for whatever reason, somebody's tampering with the wire, there's complicated electrical terms that happening. It keeps going up, so it's a consistent issue where it's not that we can't, we're not addressing it, it's just it keeps happening over and over, and so given that we have a 3-year backlog, right, it's really challenging to address these areas. The Get It Done reports do help. I know people hate them and I know people complain about them, but it helps us as community reps make sure that we are addressing any concerns that are being brought up as timely as possible. And I will also leave my contact information and my.
Great, thank you. Mike?
I just want to say thank you for whatever participation you had in that 805 exit for going to Normal Heights. There was like a horrific pothole that was there and tends to recur, but they did a wonderful job on the 3 off ramp and nice.
Yeah, and
You say that.
as far as potholes, so we had some challenges given the weather. It's been unusually rainy, so that does delay a lot of the project. So resurfacing, pothole refills, a lot of things that can't get done during when it's rainy season. But this committee has been working around the project to make sure to focus on specific areas. And so those reports, we use a data-driven approach, meaning that we work with the performance and analytics department, so they target the areas that where you're referring, so they do help.
That pothole over there. You remember? You should. In 2015, they did a study on that, and it was supposed to be concreted because they said there wasn't, the base wasn't there to support the asphalt, and it was supposed to be concreted. That was 2015, and it still hasn't been concreted.
Is it off the ramp on the?
It is at the end of
It's just at the stop sign there, but I have to say, it's just way better than I expected, so,
Yeah,
and I agree that it's short of.
Right.
It's been a Band-Aid for 8 years.
Right, correct. So I'm not sure that particular location, but if it's Caltrans or the city, we can inquire about it. I haven't been here for 8 years, unfortunately, so but I can look into that.
But it's way better than it's ever been, I have to say, and I'm grateful, so I want to
Thank you.
say that.
So at this point, we've got 5 minutes left and we're about halfway through our agenda. So-
Get it done out, anything else, we talk about the 805 ramp. When they're measuring the analytics on that, are they taking a metric that's measuring the number of requests and putting entire organization on top of that?
So it's to address the areas that they're doing the work. So they address all of them and they try, but if there are areas that are areas of concern, they use different metrics. So highly trafficked areas, areas that are often utilized near school. Same with street light repairs, they do prioritize those, but they are doing a citywide approach, meaning that they go through every council district, so they're not in one district at this just one time.
And that's gonna take a year, correct?
Huh?
They're doing the driving, they're having the people analyze by driving around for a whole year, and they're actually gonna.
Oh, that's different. That's the OCI update. So they're making sure that the street condition index is updated because it hasn't been updated since 2015. So that's a different, that's the van that's reporting the street conditions.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so, yeah, thank you for coming and interjecting. Next up is item 10, chair report. There's Community Planners Committee that is working on coming up with a strategic plan for Normal Heights and the other 3 mid-city planning groups. And then that is that's a long-term strategic plan that'll be in concert with the city. So our kickoff meeting actually is lucky enough to have representation from the city. He had heard about the meeting and took the opportunity to show up. So there'll be more on that coming out. We do need board members for the rec group. So if anyone is interested in that, contact me and I can get you to the right person. We also need an attendee for the captain's meeting. I think Gerald Shullen went there tonight. Unfortunately, it conflicts with this meeting. And so if anybody's interested in attending the captain's table, let me know and I can get you into that.
That's the police captain.
Police captain, yes. And then we'll go around for community updates. Scott Kessler is not here today, so we'll skip Adams Avenue Business Association. Gary Weber's on the line. Do you have anything for El Cajon Boulevard business improvements?
Let's tell you for one thing that the association down there is ready to take any development that you don't want up here. They have been trying to build out the boulevard because they agree with the things that have been said here. I would suggest you might want to have someone from the organization come to one of these meetings where you can just have the kind of discussion you've been having with others. And they also, they do a lot of other things, one of which is they manage the mid-city parking district. It has money. We started off trying to increase on-street parking. And is now fighting to keep parking period somewhere. And so you can get as much information as you want by having whoever you want come and speak to you directly.
Excellent. They will be participating in the Community Planners Committee. We've got seats at the table for them. So there'll be some crosstalk between the four mid-city groups and the El Cajon Business District. Thank you. Adams Avenue Community Recreation Advisory Group. Nancy?
Yeah, we really need people to come and attend these meetings, so they're very important if you want to get things done, the rec department. We don't have very many people that attend, and we can't get any projects or even discuss anything, or almost not have an agenda. I mean, enough people to have a meeting if we don't get enough people. So we have somebody that's gonna maybe be the chairperson, and we have a secretary. That's what we have right now. And we need people to get involved if you want to make things work through the next department. Right now, it's really sad. And I have, responsibility right now. I have a husband that's going through a knee replacement. And there's not always things, taken into physical therapy, whatever. I can always be there, so I can't get too involved that way. But I attend as many meetings as I can. And we need, it's very sad when you have like 5 or 6 people at a meeting. So we really need the support of
Nancy, when are the meetings?
They're the 4th Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock.
What is this week?
But they do different things, we try to get projects.
They'll pitch to me, they'll pitch to us.
Yeah.
These are the ones who can get it.
Right. I'm sorry. That's your asking. That's why I was looking at you. About getting more activities, like we're having a problem right now with the baseball field, the netting that they want to put up so that it doesn't hit the windows and the cars that goes over the fence when there's softball games. So there's other projects that need to take that part of. If you want to get to see this dog park get through faster, you need to have to support it. The park improvement project. Because without nobody supporting it, well, let's say, well, they don't want to have this these improvements made, there's nobody supporting it through the city, through our Normal Heights, so.
Okay. And when you put any kind of appeal on our website about.
We can put an announcement in our mailing list, and also Normal Heights for Smart Growth Plans. I'm putting that as an article in the next the next issue.
But I was over there Friday over at the park because we were doing some parking over there, and I was walking around, and they were over there drilling. What I think they're doing is they're testing the soil to see if they'll be able to you know, build the rec building or whatever, and they were over there by the mock building, they're over there drilling over there. There was several places that they were drilling on Friday, I know it. If you know, over there at the park. And, El Cajon, there was that big old project that's being built over there. That was my church's property that we sold. And they drilled over there to test land to see if they could put all those apartment buildings there. So that's what they're doing over at the park right now. They're drilling over there to see if they can make this, you know, these rec buildings.
It's good to see them happening.
Yes, Jim. I attended the last Recreation Council meeting. And if I attend 2 more meetings, I can become a member of their board. If I become a member of their board, I'm going to drop this board. This board is at its minimum 12 members and needs 15 to be fully outfitted. So not only does that recreation group need representation, which I'm glad to help with, but this group does too. So if you're interested in how land use issues are decided in Normal Heights, I encourage you to attend enough meetings to qualify and get on this board too.
How many meetings are we in?
Per year.
The pay stinks.
Yeah, really.
Next up is the Normal Heights History Project. There is historical documents are now in the community center office. Is this project concluded?
Ongoing.
Ongoing. And who's running it?
Pete Everesto.
Pete Everesto. Okay.
Where's
Does he live in the neighborhood still?
Yeah.
Does Pete still live in the neighborhood?
Yep.
I'm trying to see them.
Go to the street fair. He hangs out.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Normal Heights Community Association, they're the group that planned fun events in the community. We did the Easter egg hunt. I don't know if you all saw that. In April, our next event is going to be May 15th, which is a Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m., something like that. We haven't determined exactly where yet, but we have, still for you to attend some of those where we, have fun and support local businesses in the Normal Heights area. So look out for that and keep your calendar clear. This is a fun group.
And that's in the evening at a bar, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so yeah.
A lot of neighborhood mixers, bike rides, things for families and kids and stuff. Well, not the bar thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, Normal Heights for Smart Growth. I wear 2 hats, so I'm the secretary of Normal Heights for Smart Growth, and you probably got our most recent newsletter. So I don't really have much update other than what you can read in the newsletter. We did field a request for involvement in this group. Is Jason Cooperman here? Okay, Jason Cooperman expressed interest in serving on this board, so just got to get him to attend 2 meetings, and I'll see if he's interested in being involved in any committees in the meantime.
Is he on the chat? I mean, is he on the Zoom?
No, I don't see him.
Because that would qualify, right?
Yeah, that would.
Yeah.
2 consecutive meetings, right?
Yeah, no, two inside of 12. Yeah.
2 in a year.
They can do it December and then again in January, or no, January and then December. Next up is the standing and advisory committees. Utility undergrounding and street lighting mad. Emily Francis.
Yeah, sure. So, really just kind of trying to figure out where things stand with the undergrounding. For anyone who's not familiar, there's kind of 4 districts in north of Adams, just north of Adams. We have 4 different districts, and there's kind of just a lot of slogging through bureaucracy to figure out what are those timelines, what are the processes. So we're really just spending time trying to figure out what are the right questions to ask so that we're ready when things do start moving. So where things stand now is one of the blocks is at 90% complete. And Francis and I kind of are coming up with a list of questions to kind of keep on top of the city and SDG&E to make sure that we're apprised of timelines and kind of moving things forward there. That's really the first block area is the only one that's moving forward at this point. The others are kind of more in like the planning phase, which do not have funding. So that was a good bit of information that we learned last month.
How come the project started like 2-3 years ago and it stopped?
Yeah, it's, with SDG&E and the funding and COVID, I don't have an answer, unfortunately, but the good news is we did get clarification that they didn't abandon all the work that they've done previously, so we were happy to hear at least that everything that was started 2 to 3 years ago, they're still gonna continue with that, so I know it's not a great answer, but it's kind of, yeah.
And were you able to ascertain from you're talking to the city or the SDG&E or plan, why we were usurped by La Jolla and Pretty Mesa on 2 projects that they jumped over us?
Yeah, that's one of the questions that we want to ask kind of in our next batch with the city is, like when it's a city project, right? Every year there's public input on like what order do projects happen? And we just don't know on SDG&E side, is that a public process? How do we input to that? How can our community, say, hey.
Yeah, because I have the letter that they sent to us that told us that it was done by August of 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so that's definitely one of the questions that we want to ask, because if like it is a public process, then we definitely want the community to, come out and say, hey, we're over here, pick us next. But honestly, I don't know. But that's definitely on the list of questions.
They're very good at not answering questions.
Oh, yes. I've been dealing with them for 4 years.
Yeah, but
SDG&E. You'll talk to one guy, and then the next time it's somebody else. Oh, that guy doesn't do that anymore. You gotta talk to this guy, and then you gotta talk to this guy.
Sure. Are your questions being responded to in a timely manner?
Maybe just because I work with the city, I'm like, yeah, I mean, timely is a relative word. I would say this
To your
last.
satisfaction.
Yeah. I mean, I think this last batch of questions took maybe 3 weeks to get a response back. So like depending on your standards, that's not great, but in dealing with the city, that has been decent. It's not the ideal answer, but Ben has been really helpful and said, CC on these emails and, that he'll kind of try to help on his end. I was bummed that he had to go, but we also wanted to ask him, because we're getting answers from the city engineer. And so I want to ask him if he has a connection to someone directly at SDG&E who might be able to shed more light on these kind of like SDG&E questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I live over East Mountain View Drive, right across the street from Nolan Heights Elementary School. And a few months back, they were replacing one of the electric utility poles. And I went over to ask them about undergrounding, and they says, you will not see that in your lifetime. It will not happen.
That's what they told me also.
That's the ones that are in the alleyways. They said you will not see it.
Oh, south of Adams? Yeah, that's not even on the to-do list. Yeah, right now only north of Adams is, so. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is Caltrans, Caltrans grant submission. That's mine. There's a Caltrans grant program called Clean California, and they have pending this state budget passing the funds. They would have 100 million at their disposal. We've applied for a grant for 10,000. Caltrans would supply 50% of that, and the Selby team has pledged to supply the other 50% to fund a community garden, which would be at the corner of East Mountain View and Cherokee. So it would be a small space, but I think there'd be room for maybe up to 10 plots in there. Right now, the grant they're doing the grant selection, and they'll be getting back to us in September. Then the DEI program, myself, Scott Kessler, and Jim, we met to see about what we can do to incorporate membership in the board that is more reflective of the community. That's a bar that is not only set by the city, but it is part of the charter of community planning groups that they should reflect the makeup of the community, both in what do we say, culture or in homeowners, renters, people of color, youth, old. They want to have it reflect the community as much as possible. I think we've done an okay job here, but we can definitely do better. Next up is tree replacements. This was an effort for Greg, Emily, and Gerald. Okay, Gerald did meet with Sean Elo-Rivera and discussed pretty much what you heard him talk about, trees and planters. They're looking for new ideas, so if anyone has ideas about how we can get better canopy around our neighborhood, please let me or Ben Mendoza know. The joint mid-city communities plan update, we already touched on that. That's the 4 mid-city planning groups are getting together to create a plan to submit to the city that they can integrate with their long-term plan. That's a 3-year roadmap to actually getting the master plan. So the last one that was created was back in '98. So we're long overdue for that.
Well, has the city formally kicked off the mid-city CPG? Not yet. Or
Not
CPG?
yet. They're on the verge of it, so they were kind of interested that we were already looking.
Yeah.
Let's see, historical property review report. We already touched on that one.
We didn't, but then.
No? Oh, okay. Parks and Trail developments. Is anyone working on that one?
No.
Okay, is this something that is better apportioned to the Parks and Rec group? Or is this something that we should have on our agenda?
It should be the planning group. It should be the planning group and working with that other group if they ever get it together.
Okay,
To enhance park opportunities.
then we'll work on getting the rec group up to speed so that we can actually have someone to liaise with.
Yep.
Okay. Traffic issue task force, Al?
Okay, I heard back from the city, there is actually a city engineer who is looking at the intersection of West Mountain View and Adams, you know, where Adams, or West Mountain View, where Adams crosses West Mountain View between the gas station and the bridge, where there's that long stretch there, unmarked crosswalk. One of the things that we suggested was, you know, it'd be nice if there was a crosswalk there. There's a traffic engineer looking at that now. So
We had a schematic drawing in the file cabinet that we did quite a while back by a consultant who understands this stuff. If you may want to look at it as well.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent, thank you. I think at this point, we just need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, we've got.
Would you help us put away the chairs and tables?
Yeah, we're not done.
Great, thank you.